Are live here with Michel Hausmann of Miami New Drama. So excited and thrilled to be with him today. A brilliant creative person, actor, playwright, director, all the things. I'm probably getting some of that wrong. He'll correct me. But anyway, so really thrilled to be here with you, Michel, today. So this is Practical Creativity, where we unpack the creative process with people who are actually doing that thing, although everyone's creative, so that we can learn more how to apply creativity in our lives. So today, I want to turn it over to you. Let us know just a little bit about you and what you're up to right now.
Well, I'd rather talk about what I do than about myself, because I'm shy. No, so I'm the artistic director of Miami New Drama. We are a regional theater, professional theater located in the heart of South Beach, Miami Beach on Lincoln Road. And we are a little different than most theaters locally or in the country, because we do two very distinct things. We mainly do world premieres. So most of the shows we do never existed before. We commission them, we work with artists to develop, etc. We bring them to the world. The other thing we do is we are a theater that is as diverse, multicultural, multilingual as the community we live in. So all the shows we do is, they are minority majority. They really sort of like reflect and are always in conversation with this, very diverse community.
Terrific. World premieres and work that reflects the world we're actually in here in Miami, which is very close to the rest of the United States, as people say.
Right.
Seriously.
That's one advantage of Miami. It's
yes.
the United States.
Our vibrant culture is one of the reasons.
But in reality, I mean, we joke, but in reality, here's the truth: is that we are more diverse, multicultural, and multilingual than America as a whole. Yeah. But America is slowly becoming as multicultural, multiracial as Miami has been. So we have really a vantage point here. We are able to think about and create what the future of the American theater can look like, or the music in America can look like, or the visual arts, because we are already living in the future. And that is something I think that we shouldn't shy away from. We really have an opportunity to take a leadership position and not sort of like, take our cues from whatever was popular on Broadway for the theater world, or, so we actually have, I think, the ability and the responsibility, most important, to really lead the way.
Totally agree with you. And I think that's so apt. That's just so relevant. One of the reasons I came to Miami from Washington and New York is that I really didn't want to solve the same things the same ways that they had done in big markets forever. I feel like in those established markets, there's like a way to do things, and then people just participate in the way that is expected, right? They subscribe, they buy tickets, they show up, they buy tickets and they show up, It really wasn't like that in Miami, and I knew that it was an opportunity to not look like, how do we import models and ways of doing things, but like Miami really is headed, it is now where everybody else is headed, to your point. So what are the opportunities for us to create a new way, to create the way that works for us, that may not work in those big markets right now? So I totally hear you, and that for me was like a really big carrot to coming here. Tell us a little bit about what's happening at Miami New Drama. What is the mission of the organization, first of all? What have you been up to the last couple of years, and what's going on right now?
Well, listen, the mission is sort of those kind of four pillars that we have. The first pillar is just to artistic excellence. Art doesn't change lives. Great art changes lives. And I'm going to talk about that. I want to talk about that at some other point, because I think as we're seeing now what is happening across the field, we see a lot of big cultural institutions that they were just too big to, a lot of institutions are growing sort of like what I call the edifice complex. They now want a bigger building, and then bigger building is more office, and we need to fill those offices. And in the way art it institutionalizes to a point where nothing fucking matters. It's just so you have to be careful that you really lead with transformative art, with the investigation of art. It's bullshit. Art cures. Art, no, art is dangerous. Art is dangerous. And if you don't think that you're dealing with kryptonite, then you really are part of the problem, because art is the thing that bites back. So artistic excellence is sort of kind of like our first pillar. Our second pillar is that we are as diverse, dynamic, multicultural as our city. We look like what our city looks like. We're part of the community. The third is that we not only look like the community, but we deal with issues pertinent to this community. When you look at our season can only happen in Miami. I try to any theater across the country, look at their season and try to guess what city they are. It's going to be impossible. Look at Miami New Drama, look at our season, and you're like, oh, this is in Miami, no doubt about it. And I think that we take pride in that. And in fact, that's why we've been successful. It's just it's not rocket science. We've come in 4 years from $100,000 to $4 million a year. It's our budget in 4 years.
Amazing.
And what's your signature? Just re-understand where you are. Understand who is our community. What does a community look like? This is a community that has 11% of the people are white Anglos. 11%. That was not true 30, 40 years ago. It is true now. But a lot of those institutions think that 11% is the 100% of our community. And it's not true. It's not true. There are twice as many African-American or Afro-Caribbean citizens in Miami than white Anglos, and 4 times as many Hispanic. So it's about including everyone. Everyone needs to feel invited. It needs to feel, there was one of those big cultural institutions had a sort of like a market forum a couple of years ago about like, how can we excite minorities? First of all, they're not minorities, they're majorities. Okay, you are the minority. And it's not how do we advertise in the internet. It's you have to, just even that question tells you how incorrectly people are thinking. You have to understand who we are. And it's how can we talk to we? How can we talk to us? Who are we? What do we look like? What are we interested? So if you can't see yourself, you can't really have an honest artistic conversation with a community. And lastly,
totally,
we want to have a conversation with the country as a whole. We want to be part of the national conversation of theater. We feel that theater shouldn't have, not only needs to be part of the, we need a seat in the table. We need to even lead the conversation. I think that arts and theater can do that. That is the power of what we have. But it seems like most of the people have this extraordinary power, and they just give it up by not taking risks, by not doing any artistic exploration, by not really investigating and trying to generate thought.
I love it. Art bites back, and being part of the national conversation is also being where they are. So I know that TCG, which is the group, the service organization that all of the theater organizations. Oh, we have a furry friend. How fun.
We have Golda, mommy.
So TCG, which is a member organization that has a lot of theaters across the United States.
700 theaters, yeah.
They were actually here.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation about the changing attitudes, just like realities and being real, right? If we're going to be doing art that's relevant, we have to be with and of and from our community. Systems of inequity and like all of these things are I think really polarizing, but art is the thing that can help us come together. Art, like you said, like art bites back. So How did that go with TCG? What was the conversation about? I think you may have even led a session. Like, tell us what is happening on the national conversation. Then let's bring it back to Miami, of course, because that's really what we're here.
It was a very interesting experience. I was very honored. TCG named me co-chair with Beth Boone of the conference, and so I had a chance to really influence and take a front seat in what we wanted the conference to be. I've been going year after year. It's in a different city every year, and really, it was very interesting because I am very much involved in the national conversation, equity, inclusion, which are now sort of like part of the conversation. But there's really thousands of other items that we're talking about. And for some reason, Miami, I feel, wasn't even. I mean, listen, and I love the people in the theater community. They're great, wonderful professionals. It's mainly a white Anglo
Right.
crew, and the conversations that are happening in the country were not happening in Miami. The idea that there's just sort of like just male directors, and the fact that that this is we are 89% non-white Anglos, and that is not represented in the type of shows. I mean, listen, there are companies, and the beauty of it is that I think that lately now there is part of a pushback. So it's not only Miami New Drama. I think that the success of shows like Amparo, the success of Miami Motel Stories, it's sort of trying to take the narrative of what is our city, what is the stories that we need to tell here. So it's really exciting to sort of like start to see that change. But I was really surprised about, how some of the important conversations that are happening across the country are not yet happening in Miami. Mm-hmm. And I hope really that the conference helped a little bit of that, because we deep down there are people here in the theater community are just wonderful people who, they do something as noble as theater, right? So they're wonderful, they're great allies. I think it was important. Sometimes people don't understand that they're not being inclusive. They don't know, it's I don't want to call it racism, but it's sort of racism by omission, by just not, by not really understanding. And in a way, it's not necessarily their fault. They are a product of a society that created silos. So especially these cities full of silos. If you grew up in your silo, you assume that this silo is 100% of your world.
Right.
But it's not. It's a
right.
silo.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, though, which is like we are successful here because we are totally Miami, and we're not creating something that needs to necessarily succeed anywhere else. To me, that just says like how you are creating a culture of belonging. And I think there are plenty of organizations here that are looking to diversify their audiences, but I think they may be stuck on that question of like, how do you create a sense of belonging and like you are welcome here. That you said that very clearly. Like you have to understand the community and know that everybody's welcome. So how do you do that, and what is everyone else missing? Because we see how successful you are.
I think first thing is that your institution, board of director, everybody needs to look like what the city looks like. You have to do it. Yeah, period. So Miami Drama looks like what our staff. There are 10 of us. It's a diverse bunch. There's a couple of languages spoken at all times in the office. We understand that we are a Hispanic city. We have a Hispanic season. We don't, we have a season in Spanish. We have a season in English, and the season in English is very multicultural, etc. And we really, take the investigation. What is important to the city? What has transformed the city? What are the issues that the city has not resolved yet? And so that's what shows, like Queen of Basel, the Cubans, Cocaine Cowboys. Those shows are sort of our response to those questions.
Take us just a little bit more into that, because on one hand, you're talking about being of and creating for the community, but then there's also art, and artistic folks don't necessarily create for the market. They create because they just can't help it. So tell us, there's like a dynamic tension there. Tell us how you approach that.
Well, it's interesting. I understand what you're saying, but I really always felt, in a way, uh, I'm sort of like a cultural populist. I want my shows to be successful. I want my shows to be relevant, and I enjoy doing them. Right? I think that there is not a feeling of like, well, we're gonna give one to you and one to us. I'm gonna do what I want. I feel that what I want is to have a conversation. So if that is your north, you're always hopefully going to have a conversation. I think that there's something interesting though, which is, although we're extremely focused on this microcosm of Miami, because we also feel that this is the future of America, we think that the more specific our shows are, the more chances that they're going to have a future in other markets. Because universality comes from specificity. And so that's really how we approach things. Local waves, or to change national ties.
I love that. Seth Godin, thought leader. It's okay. He said basically like, your weirdness is what makes you special, so you might as well embrace it. There's plenty weird here, right? I mean, not really weird. I mean, just like beautiful and diverse, like funky, like Florida man type stuff, right? There's a weirdness to Florida, right?
Absolutely. Let me, before, Golda, ven acá, Golda, ven acá. All right.
We have an action-packed conversation already.
Yeah, there she is.
Oh, okay, there she is. Very good. So tell us, like, all right, so the background is super helpful. Let's hear kind of, we had a little bit of a conversation where we were talking about the move to digital, and right now everything is digital.
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, tell us.
Well, so I think there's something holy about what we do in theater. I think that the idea of being together in communion with a group of people is what makes theater different than any other genre. The moment you put a play, stream it, it's not a play anymore, it's a video. And yeah, I mean, I'm not interested too much in that. I think that, people who are doing readings and all that, I don't know. But what we can do, so what can we do? Because this seems like it's going to take a very long time for us to be able to produce a show again. So what we can do is teach. You don't lose anything. I mean, yeah, you want to be in the same room, but in reality, we're all together. We have a teacher, a class of participants, they're back and forth. We can probably replicate the model of teaching without really losing much, right? Like it's not an exact photo, it's a pretty decent painting of it. Whereas theater, it's like a completely nonsense of what the real thing is. So we've, because we are a theater that mainly does world premieres, etc., we have a great network of people. And so, for example, tomorrow, if you go to Miami, to colony.org, you can register today for tomorrow's masterclass with David Schrader. David Schrader was the vice president of Disney Theatrical. He produced The Lion King and Aladdin and all those famous shows that sort of changed the nature of Broadway. And he's going to be giving us a class about the business of theater. So we have those, and it's really impressive. It's really impressive. We have on Friday Rogelio Martinez. Rogelio Martinez is, I think, one of the greatest playwrights in America today. We have a couple projects with him, and he's going to teach us about playwriting. And we've had Oren Squire, who wrote the TV show This Is Us, and The Good Fight, and Evil on CBS, and has written a couple of shows for Miami Drama, teach about playwriting. And the beauty of that is that all those shows, sort of, all those classes that have already passed are in our archives. So if you go to colony.org, you can not only register for future classes, you can also see, the past classes. And 2,500 people have registered for our classes. 2,500 people. That's insane. We are surprised about the success of our program. They're all free. All classes are free, but you have to participate. You have to sign up for it, be in the Zoom class together, ask questions, etc., etc. So we feel blessed that we sort of we have such a clear mission that it just made all this. We did it the next week. We just, okay, who are we? How does that translate into this new reality? We just did it. And meanwhile, I'm also now, taking the time to develop other projects, commissioning other works. Now I'm investing money out. I'm investing money on new commissions, on new ideas. Of course, monetarily speaking, this is really rough. We were in the middle of a $1.5 million show, which was A Wonderful World, the new music of Louis Armstrong.
That breaks my heart. I was so looking forward to it.
And we'll do it at some point. The show is sort of like frozen at the Colony Theater. We have the set there, the light, everything is frozen.
Looking at.
Pretty much. And it was the first time that we had outside money, expecting the show to go to Broadway. So we had some, we have what it's called enhancement, meaning that somebody donates a lot of money to you, and then the rights revert to them once you've done with the show, and they can take it on to Broadway, etc. So we have, unfortunately, a hiatus on that. But listen, we are a resilient bunch. Theater has always sort of existed in the threshold. People have been saying for 3,000 years the theater is dying, and we are sort of like dying for a long time. But we do have certain advantages, I think, if you compare us to classical music, opera, etc., which is people like us. We are popular. People buy a lot of tickets. They want to see what we're doing, and so you're familiar with great institutions that I don't know how much ticket sales represent to them. I assume very little, but ticket sales is 50% of our budget, right? So in a way that if we are in conversation with the community, then we sort of like are halfway there, right?
Right.
That's one advantage, I feel that.
So what you're saying really reminds me of something that Corey Davis was saying, which is resilience is something that relies on everybody. And if we're not developing relationships at all times, whether or not we're in a crisis or whether it's a good time, like we're not going to be able to survive anyhow. I mean, 1.5 million is a very significant chunk of your budget, right? So,
it's huge.
But what you also said is you look to the brain trust you have, you look to your board, you look to your staff, and you came up with, within a week, you were already shipping like a new model that leveraged your relationships and your expertise and the platforms that you had available. So have you been raising money or encouraging people pay what you can, or any sort of?
No, not yet. I think I haven't felt comfortable with that, especially because, I mean, in reality, compared to like our hole in the bucket, it's just not going to make a big difference. And I'd rather at this point just continue to build community. I think we are, as we move forward and people have enjoyed this class so much that they sort of like want more of it. And we're probably going to do a secondary model in which we're going to do more in-depth classes with less people. That probably will be paid, but we'll continue the free model of master classes. As long as one will not replace the other. We'll just create a secondary education. We have now a director of education, so we really sort of have the resources to create the secondary model in which we work, with 4 or 5 sessions. The participants actually create work. They're being reviewed and talked about and critiqued, and I think it's going to be significantly cheaper than some of the alternatives. But it's a good model for the institution to help some some of our costs and the artists who teach, which is more important for them to have a revenue, which is very, very important. Yeah.
For sure. That's so great, and it's just so smart. I'm thinking also about how for groups that are focused on performing arts, if you don't have the ability to open your doors and to welcome people in for that in-person experience, you are it seems natural to be like, okay, well, what do we do now? So to be able to think ahead, to think forward, to go ahead and create something, what happens then is you don't lose currency. And by that, I don't mean money, I mean like being
Right.
current, right? You're able to continue the conversation. And what I know and what I see with kind of like legacy art forms, classical music, you know, visual art, like all of the art forms, if we're not known, we're not developing audiences. If we're not liked, we're not developing audiences. If people go and they try it and they don't feel like it's them, it's not a place they belong, right? They're not coming back. They're not our audiences. And, you know, if they have an experience where they don't trust you anymore, something bad happened and they just really don't want any part of it, we're not creating that those audiences that will be part of what we're doing, not because it's better for us, but because we really are trying to do something that is relevant to people and touches their lives in that magic way that you're describing. But I love about what you've created is that you have your currency going, and perhaps through this new model, if you have your free level and then you have your, you know, slightly more involved level, you're developing that trust, and that, you know, people are aware of you, they're liking you, they're seeing what you're doing, they're responding to it, and then, you know, the trust is really getting to know you more intimately, which if you're in a master class and you're being required to participate, you're kind of like being accountable too. So there's a different layer of trust going on. And I love that, because I think in the digital, like you said, it's easy to just broadcast out, but when you're really in conversation and dialogue
Right.
with people, you get the opportunity to actually build a relationship with them that you wouldn't otherwise. So I think that's a great
I
solution. How
think you
cool.
you said it beautifully. You said it beautifully. It's about currency, and it's about communication and engagement, and you know, and we are enjoying this so much. You know, we really, we always do talk backs, etc. But now this is, you know, this is much more intimate, really, with our audience than otherwise, because we really are in this sort of like democratic playing field of Zoom, where we all have a voice and we all look alike. Nobody's throwing a podium or not. So you know, I think that I think the experience have been fantastic. I'm okay. Like, you know, the first, here's right. My train of thought was like this. Okay, I have to prepare now, and the team needs to prepare now for 18 months of not doing anything. Because if we are able to do anything before that, we don't need to prepare for it. We know exactly how to do it. Like, there's just like, we go call people, you know, that we know how to do. So let's imagine worst case scenario, and let's think that that's the only, and let it surprise us. But let's all panic, go to worst case scenario, and in fact, because we do always world premiere, you know, sometimes think of it like I'm doing wine, where sometimes, oh, these grapes are not ready. They have to. So sometimes I can't do 4 world premieres in a season like I want to. Unfortunately, they're not. The harvest is not ready. So
Yes.
I can only do 2. So now it's my chance to like get harvest, just work on the harvest. You work on planting more seeds, so that from the next 5 years, I'm going to have an abundance of world premiere shows.
I love
Um,
that. Yeah. That
Maybe it's me being a denial of reality, that I'm trying to keep up a you know, a resilient attitude. But listen, I think that, especially because we are, you know, we're $4 million, but only 10 full-time people. We are very small overhead. You know, I mean, I don't know if you've been to our office. Our office is like shit. It's just like
tiny.
tiny. People are, you know, one on top of the other. You really have to like each other, or you can't, you know. So I remember one of the funders came in and said, "Oh my God, you have to take a picture of this. Every funder is gonna love you, because they know that you won't waste money. Like, there's no way to waste like this. This is the worst thing I've ever seen." And you
It's
know,
great.
well, but the money goes in the art. Like, you see our shows, and you know that there's money that went in the art. So if we don't have to produce shows, we can probably sustain ourselves during this crisis for a little bit, and not having to, as you know, other institutions, unfortunately, as I read, they had to fire dozens of people, furlough workers, etc. We're keeping our staff. working with the board, working with, with the federal loans, et cetera, to make sure that we're not going to be forced into that situation. And in fact, that everybody's working. All the staff is now, like, we now are an online education platform. That's who we are, and everybody's working on it, from the designer to development, everyone. This is what we do now. This is who we are now.
It's amazing. I actually really appreciate and admire that, because I work with a lot of people who are they're not super happy doing what they're doing, or whatever they're doing in their organization isn't working and they're afraid to make a change. But, I'm a performing artist. That was my training, classical music. And I know that whatever you can be in the practice room so many times, you can be in rehearsal so many times, eventually you got to go on that stage, and what happens, happens. And I think that what you're describing really resonates with me and my own training, because you don't know what's going to go on, but the show must go on, right? So what you said about 18 months and, what if we don't come back, or what if it's, whatever the worst case scenario is, you didn't let that stop you from creating a new solution and just shipping it immediately. So that fearlessness to try something, because again, what you're saying is also, we're doing market research, right? So we're testing a new model in a small way, very little risk. We can't get it wrong. We can't, make less money than free.
Right.
So, but we're being generous in the process and building our relationships with the community.
And we're doing it bilingually.
Bilingually.
So there are classes in Spanish and classes in English. And we have now the top Argentinian theater maker, Claudio Tolcachir, is going to join us 2.5 weeks from now, who's a god. Like, I can't believe that he's sort of like a person. Oh, this is like we're getting just the amount of talent, and people, there's a moment where artists really feel they want to give back, and they might not have money to donate, but they have knowledge, and they know that they can empower other people by sharing their knowledge. And
many people
speaks so beautifully about those artists that are generous, and they don't try to hold on to what they know like this, but they're like empowering and encouraging other people to write, to think outside of their box. It really have moved me very much.
That's amazing. And I think it speaks so much to what I've seen as well in all of these conversations. This is day 23, right? So people have been extraordinarily generous, and this is another reason to communicate. You never know who's watching, you never know who has something they want to share. So definitely being nimble and being able to, turn the ship quickly and not only test a new model, but create deeper relationships. I think it's really great. So how about one last thing, Michel? I'd love to hear how you are staying sharp as a creative person, as an artist yourself. I know how passionate you are about theater, and like, this never stops because you are such an artist to your core. How are you dealing with these new times and being a classroom teacher at your house now, right, and going on your bike ride?
Right, you spoke last year, and I spoke. I was in the middle of although in between that, after that, I got really sick, had a fever, I had to spend 3 days in bed.
Oh no.
Went to get tested, did the test, tested positive for strep throat.
Strep throat.
And I was like, what's strep throat for in adults? And I researched, and it says very rare in adults, except for kindergarten and first grade teachers. And I was like, that's exactly who I am now. So that made all the sense in the world. And so I've been teaching my kids. It's funny. I think I told you this. I start like really, Zen and this Montessori open-hearted teacher. And then like 20 minutes later, I'm, like, I become Homer Simpson strangling them. But the other thing that I've been doing is that I've been making my own drinks. I've been making. I'm in the process now of making limoncello. And then I've done gin. I've done about like 5 or 6 liters of gin, and then I have this nice little glasses, and I designed a label, and Dionysus libation.
Okay, that sounds right.
We share the same god of wine and theater, the same guy, right? So
yeah.
And then I just hand them out to friends, etc. I drink a very small proportion of what I make. And then the limoncellos are going to take a couple more months. That's a larger batch. And so I think it's important for me to have a hobby. Otherwise, I'll lose my mind. Okay?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
so that's my day.
Creators have got to create. And if you want to have a strong Zoom cocktail happy hour game, talk to Michel.
That's right.
Amazing. And any last words of just hope, what you hope will come of all of this uncertainty and all this weirdness that we're going through right now?
It's a good question. I hope that a lot of myths have been broken in every, from the myth of professionals are not important, expertise is not important, sort of like that we've seen so clearly in the failure of government. And also I think in the culture field, really what it means to be a cultural institution. What really, now that like the lights are on and like people have to like, who are you really? Like what was the reason for your existence? And I think that that's what we need to reflect. And I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think that we definitely need to reflect on.
Amazing. I'm hopeful for those same things too. Well, Michel, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure. Time flies when I'm speaking to you. And thank you for everything Miami New Drama is doing. I'm going to ask you to send me some links. I'll put them up. I'm putting these on YouTube. So we'll send the link around when it's ready. And thank you so, so much. Really a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful day and stay creative.
Thank you, Marta. Such a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.